the day you're watching this. As you know, this is a show about time traveling. We are going to talk about quantum physics, which is probably in part to what our guest does in his books. Let's be honest, but you know
Listen,
that
I
already.
have strong opinions on time travel. I'll get into this.
Oh. This is going to be fun. But anyway, before that, it's 11 a.m. for our guest. So thank you for being here, Jordan.
My pleasure.
5 p.m. here. So time travel. Time travel.
All right, already.
Make a note. Make a note. We're going to go there. I am the same guy as I usually are. You just see me without the beard, so probably you don't recognize me and think I'm somebody else. It's me. It's me. You've never seen me like that. I haven't in 10 years. It's fine. But anyway, all joking aside, how are things, Jordan? How's everything in the side of the pond? Is things getting better in New York? It's still crazy, COVID-wise or life-wise? How's things for you?
Oh, it's all crazy. It's all crazy. We've been working from home for over a year now. So yeah, it's bananas. It's bananas. It was a whole new way of working that we've never considered before. Before this all happened, every once in a while people would talk about, oh, we do so much of our work over the phone and by email. Like, I'd much rather work from home. And I was always like, absolutely not. That's terrible. It would be awful. I like being around people. I want to be near everybody. I don't want to, even just my, my crew, not the creators typically, but with the other editors, that would be awful. I hate it. And then I had no choice. And I honestly, I got, in many ways, got used to it quicker than I thought I would and have acclimated to a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's certainly harder. And there are things that are better. I will be honest. There are things that are better. I mean, the easiest thing to say is better is I get more time with my son, because 2 hours of commuting is cut out of my day every day. Yeah. And so that's literally just 2 hours that he's not at daycare and that he's with me. Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
So that's better. But even in the job itself, I think there are things that have gotten better. Like, out of necessity, at some point I realized, that before COVID, getting together with our talent was incredibly hard. If they were going to have a summit, mm-hmm. It was a huge deal. We'd fly people in from sometimes other countries.
Yes.
They'd all have to stay at hotels. There's giant dinners. There's huge schedules. Tons of money is spent. But at some point, pretty quickly in the process, I realized it is now equally as difficult or as easy, either depending how you look at it, for mm-hmm. me to get together with my creators as it is for me to get together with my assistant, mm-hmm. who used to be 10 feet from me. Now I have to do this whole rigmarole just to talk to her. So it occurred to me, we do these like editorial meetings by Zoom. Why aren't we doing more face-to-face not just creator one-on-one talks, but creator like summits? And that became a thing for the X office, which mm-hmm. is the office I run, that we just said, let's have bi-weekly or every 2 weeks meetings where the whole writing crew and the editorial crew gets together and we talk about the stuff that affects the whole story. And we talk about planning this and that. And we did this massive crossover last year during the pandemic that this became incredibly useful for, because mm-hmm. we were able to coordinate things so much better by just talking everything out every time we had one of these meetings. Mm-hmm. So that's got better, but at the same time, there's other things that are so much harder and so much more. I don't know. Like I'm a person who does thrive on interaction, on being with people, and I mean, well, extrovert they call it, right? You get energy from being with people rather than expend energy to be with people. So it's been hard. It's been hard to be kind of alone so much of the time. And also, they always talk about, one of the things before we always used to talk about is that, we're, as editors, we're all here in an office together and we're with each other and we're going to lunch and we're talking and we're hanging out. But our creators, you have to keep in mind that our creators are all sitting alone in a basement, like writing, or sitting alone in a basement drawing. Like, they are by themselves with no interaction, getting inside their heads, mm-hmm. getting paranoid about things. And now I'm experiencing that. Now I get to sit here and go, what is everybody else thinking? What is everybody else doing? Oh, they're all out to get me. Oh, what's happening? So It's been crazy, and it's been hard, and I still love my job, but man, it there are times when it gets real difficult, and
Absolutely.
I'm happy that I do get to work with so many people that I love working with, because it saves it.
You could be like, kill me now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
No, but
I mean, I think nobody goes into comics. There are exceptions, but pretty much nobody goes into comics to get rich. Everybody goes into comics because they love it.
yeah.
And so
If you get into comics to get rich, you know what? Find a life, because you're going to fail miserably. Because it's like, oh, Robert Kirkman, there's one. Guys,
yeah,
there's
exactly.
one.
Exactly.
There's not a million Robert Kirkmans. It's one. So stop.
Yeah, everybody who works in comics works in it because it's something they love. And so the fact that we share that gets us through a lot of stuff together. Like that we all bond over that love and what we share in it.
Mm-hmm. As I said to your boss and other people when this started, like, welcome to my world. now in a way you get it. This is how we live, and I completely agree with you. It's much better for certain things, but it's much worse for others. For example, I miss our twice a year dinners at Hill Country.
Yeah. Oh, that food is so good. I wish I could be near it again. Absolutely.
Like, CB asked me, what do you miss the most about New York? Like, going to dinner with you guys. Not even the work. Just having the time to sit down and chat about whatever. Not even work. Whatever. It's just the human interaction. Is that something? Is that so? Even if it means 8 hours on a plane for me, I miss it. Even if it sounds crazy. Do you miss conventions at all?
That's a mixed bag. I mean, again, the things I miss about conventions mostly are the things you're talking about, getting together with my creators that I don't see in person, and like doing things like hanging out and going to restaurants and stuff like that. I like doing panels. I'm not like afraid of crowds, but I just don't like being in them that much. Like, and I'm not a germaphobe. I'm not I'm not like, oh, I can't stand people touching me or anything like that. It's just, I go into a convention hall and I see a zillion people and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to wade through everybody. It's so hard to do anything. I want to go and see all the people I know, and I want to talk to them. And I shouldn't even say, it's not that I don't like talking to fans. I actually like talking to fans too, because like I said, I'm here because I love comics. So if fans see me and they come up and they say, oh my God, I love X-Men, and they start talking about something, I'm totally into that. It's just literally that it's a room full of thousands of people, and I'm like, it makes it hard to walk anywhere. There's a lot of cool stuff at conventions, though. When I do make my way around them, I like to go buy stuff. I like to go. I mean, most of the time I spend in Artist Alley, because I'll go aisle by aisle and see all the people I know. But it is fun to walk the floor too and go like, what can I pick up? Last convention I went to was C2E2. Before this all closed down. We had an X Summit there, actually. So all the X writers were there, and that was a lot of fun. I bought I can't remember what it's called. You know that there's this, I think it's European. There's a European magazine that really is like it comes with a little collector figure of
Yes, I know the one you mean, but I don't remember the name.
I don't remember the name either. But yeah, it's like it's like a little metal painted Marvel figure, and it comes with like a little magazine that's like, I don't know, 5-10 pages or something that shows pictures of them. And I bought one of Mojo. It's like this big. It's around the corner. I'd grab it, but I'd have to like disconnect for a second. But it's like a Mojo. It's like this big, and it's sweet. It's creepy and great. And I was like, well, I gotta get that. In fact, I bought that. A couple of the X crew got stuff. I think Jerry got Sebastian Shaw. Teeny got Brian Braddock, Captain Britain. I'm trying to remember if anybody else got one. I can't remember now. But yeah, we all bought a couple of those. Those were super fun. So I do like going to cons and just seeing stuff.
I don't know if the magazine is called Eagle Moss, but those figurines, Eagle Moss is the one who makes them. But I don't know if the magazine is called the same. I was trying to remember. And
it's fun because they're just, like I said, they did like a zillion characters. So the booth I bought it from had like just a stand with like and they actually, I say Marvel characters, they do DC characters too. Yeah. And they do a ton of obscure. Like I said, they had Mojo. Like it's not like they just have the Avengers.
Wait. Have you seen the chess they have?
No.
There's an X-Men chess.
I will send you the list.
I will send you the list. I will send you the link because probably those figurines or characters are part of the chessboard.
Okay. Well, Mojo's way too big to be on a chessboard.
Okay, so maybe there's another one. But there's an X-Men one. There's about DC Marvel ones. They're amazing. Like small figurines. They make the chessboard. Okay, imagine my name is Victor Frankenstein. I'm your doctor.
Okay.
I don't have a good one, but a doctor anyway. And this rotary pen just became, syringe. So I know wait, have you had 2 shots already or just one?
My second shot's tomorrow.
Okay, I just gave you the second one. That's true.
Oh.
We moved the days. I just gave you the second one. And you know what? Fuck it. I'm Jim Carrey. Fuck it. I just gave the shot to the world. Just cure pandemic.
Great.
So imagine that I could do that. What would be the first thing you could do that you've been dying to do since March last year? Like, oh my God, the moment they release me into the world, into the jungle, what I'm going to do? What is the first thing?
That's a toughie. I mean, it depends on, first of all, it depends if we're talking like realistically or not. Because if we're talking like dream, not quite, as in what am I really, really going to do? It's not going to be this. But if I could do anything, it would be go to Disney World and go to the Star Wars land. Because I've been wanting to go to that since it opened and haven't been able to because I have, like I said, a young kid. He's 3 now. Yeah. If I could go to that, I would. And obviously, there's been no opportunity to because of everything that happened. But more realistically,
but that's realistic. Remember, we're saying I'm curing the pandemic all over the world.
Well, I don't mean it's not realistic because they don't have it too. I just meant because it's unlikely I will drop everything and go to Disney World.
My kid went to Disneyland with us when she was 2. Okay, so could be.
But my son loves Star Wars. Like I showed him Star Wars way too young. I think we started watching the films of Star Wars at like 2. And he has seen every single one of them, including Rogue One, because I was like, for a while I held off on Rogue One because I was like, well, that one's real heavy. But then I went, well, he doesn't get any of the heavy stuff. Yeah. He's just going to be like, look, there's more stormtroopers and more ships. And so he had a great time. He had fun watching it. He liked K, he likes K2. He likes the robot. He likes all of the stuff. His favorite is Darth. He loves Darth, but he also does love Kylo Ren. So again, I can't wait to take him. Mm-hmm. It blew my mind, him being a baby and loving Star Wars and, liking the Millennium Falcon. And I can be like, you're going to go on the Falcon someday. And I'm not lying to him.
No,
like, the fact that 5 years ago nobody could have said that, I don't know. It just blows my mind. It's like you're gonna get to go on the Falcon someday, and he will.
It's funny because we took her when she was 2. Of course, she doesn't remember anything. She was in the car all the time. But then when she was 4, mm-hmm. again after San Diego, of course, mm-hmm. And then last year when she was 6, she just turned 7. We took her to Disneyland France, mm-hmm. And nice. And more you see more stuff from Star Wars. And last year, she really had a chat with Chewbacca, rolling, she was imitating it, and we were like, okay, she's having fun now. So mm-hmm. that's when you want to come back. The more the older they get, the funnier it is for them. So
I mean, my wife and I have gone to Disney World not a million times or anything, but like maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 times before we had him, and we've always had a really nice time, just the 2 of us. But I will say, we always would see young kids crying. And I get it because they get real tired and their emotions are like super mm-hmm. intense in the moment. So they freak out. But that's the thing. We're like, oh, he will have a great time, but also he will scream.
You have both. You have to get into your head that there's going to be a moment. We took her to a Star Tours, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. and once the Star Tours, she loved it. She went crazy when she was 4, so we thought, when she was 6, she wanted to love it much more. No, it was mm-hmm. the opposite. When she was 6, she got really scared and started crying. So it's like, okay, so now she's more conscious. So of course, the other times it was just the fun. Whoa, she didn't get it, and now it's, oh my God, this is scary. So you don't know what to expect. But most of the time they have fun. But when they get tired, you are like, okay, give me a gun. I want to shoot myself.
We're very interested to see where he falls on the spectrum of how he feels about rides, because my wife's family, until the pandemic, has literally gone to this amusement park called Cedar Point in the middle of the country, in the middle of the U.S. Every year for 30 something years.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the exact number, but they literally went every year, and it's a theme park that is mostly roller coasters. So she loves them. I can't stand them. I do not like roller coasters. I am a giant coward. If you want to know how much of a coward I am as far as rides, well, basically the answer is anything that drops, I'm at the smallest drop, I get scared. Mm-hmm. So when I go on the Pirates of the Caribbean, I'm okay, but I do get scared because I'm like, "Ooh, it's coming! It's coming! The part where we're gonna go down, and I don't like it." And it's fun again. Obviously, every time it's like, okay, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I have ridden on. I gathered up my courage to go on Thunder Mountain at Disney World. We're talking about just Disney World. I hope you like this Disney World podcast we're doing. I gathered up.
Remember what I said just before we started. This is unscripted. It can go anywhere. So we are just going there.
I gathered up my courage to go on Thunder Mountain, and I actually really like it because it doesn't have any significant drops. Like it makes you think it's going to. It goes up, but then when it gets to the top, rather than dropping like a lot of roller coasters do, it spends a lot of time zipping around really fast around corners, and I'm cool with that. There's only like one moment where it drops for like half a second, but it's fine. Space Mountain scares me a lot more, but I have done it. And again, since my wife likes roller coasters, I was like, okay, I'll do this. The whole time in the line, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. And we get in, we do it, and I get through it, and I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. Like I would do it again, and my wife is like, yeah, it's boring. I don't care. We don't have to go.
I am the same. Since I was a kid, in a small, one of those summers amusement parks that they put portable, I call them, that they put in my hometown. They put on a roller coaster, and literally, I was saved by one of my brothers because it didn't open, but it wasn't that safe.
Oh.
So since then, I cannot sit down in one, even if I know it's incredibly safe. I'm like, you know what? No, but that's kind of thing, with the water and all that, I can do it. That's my limit. Paloma just loves
yeah,
that's like crazy. She's like, give me the biggest one, and we have in PortAventura here. We have, like the Dragon Can and another one, which are like two of the three biggest, steepest in the world. And every time we go to PortAventura, the Universal Park, I'm like, go. She's like, no. Just, if you're not doing it, go. I am not going to. But I know you love it. And she comes back like, trembling, because it's so crazy. And you go, this your legs are not supported. It's like one of those where you're like that. And she's like legs trembling. But it's like, you just loved it. It's crazy. You just like, I cannot do that. I will die. If I do that, I just die.
I get real. I mean, again, people talk about Splash Mountain. They're like, oh, but that one's so tame. And I'm like, no, the whole deal with Splash Mountain is you go down a steep slope. Like that's the exact thing I'm scared about. That's the one I want to go on least. That's why that one, I said I gathered up the courage to go on Space Mountain, and I won't even bother doing Splash Mountain because I'm just like, the whole idea is we're gonna fall. Forget it. I'm out.
Leave me alone. I'm not gonna go. Okay, so there's some comments here, people.
Oh, yes. Sorry, we're just talking about Disney.
Yeah. So I normally leave the comments for the questions for about an hour, but since we went on a rant about Disney, let's just give them some space. Mikel Navarro, hello, Mikel. Hi, Jordan. I have some questions. I leave them here in case I have to leave to play with my kids. That's a good reason. With the arrival of Hickman, the mutant franchise has been revolutionized, and not only in terms of stories, but also in visual and graphic design. Tom Mueller has even done some design variant covers. Do you think there's an open way to do more things of this kind? I would love to see more covers like Tom's or David Aja's work for X Corp.
That's a great point. I mean, yes, the answer is, the real answer obviously always is if it sells, they'll do more. So I'm very happy that the Muller variants have done well enough that we keep doing them.
Mhm.
And I think the more people see that drives people to pick up more comics, the more likely it is that we'll see more of them. I think it's been great. It's a part of what Hickman brought to the X-Men that I don't think we talk about enough. That he was very, he's a very graphic minded person, and so when he came in, a lot of times we do talk about the data pages, but it was more than just the data pages that he puts the text pages. It's that he was like, no, the whole book should have a look to it. It should go through the data pages. It should go through the next issue page. It should go through the credits page. It should go through everything we do. It feels of a kind. And we spent a lot of time working on that. Him and Muller bouncing design ideas back and forth, picking fonts. Like there was a lot of discussions of what fonts we should be using on those data pages. Like you'll notice that the data pages have like a texture to them. It's very subtle because they're white, but like there's sort of these little lines in there, and the like headers and the footers and all that. That's all stuff that him and Tom put together, and we've stuck to. And I think it makes, the thing about it is it's one of those unquantifiable things, and so it's something that we have to fight for in the making of the books, because there are, it's a business, right? At the end of the day, it's about sales. It's about how much money we're going to spend versus how much money we're going to make, right? So there are folks who look at it from that point of view, and from them they go, well, are you saying that design stuff is going to make people buy more copies? And we're like, well, not literally, not in the sense that somebody's going to go, oh, there's good design in that book, well, I'll get it then. But in an unquantifiable way, that as a reader of the book, they have a more rich experience. I doubt even that readers are looking at it going, this is very satisfying that it has this unified look. They're probably not thinking about it at all. But I believe, and we believe, that at the end of the day, their experience reading it is enhanced by it, and they will be happier having read it because of that unified feel, that it feels of a kind. This is what an X book is. It's what it feels like. They have a unity to them, and then it will make them want to buy more copies as a result. I mean, again, not literally, but because of their happiness and satisfaction, they'll go, I'm going to continue to buy that book.
But it's a subconscious level. I mean,
yes,
you don't even need to put it there as something that you're conscious that you're buying it because you feel it.
Right.
No, it's because you feel it that you buy it. It's the other way around. It's
right.
subconscious.
Yes.
You in your head, it creates a unity that when you see another one like that, you don't even think I'm going to buy it because it looks the same, but it gives you that feeling of each part of something bigger, right?
Right. And I mean, it's one of those things that they always talk about with, the best special effects. The best special effects are the ones you don't notice.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think the same with this. If the design is good and satisfying, you're probably not going to spend time thinking about it. You're just going to experience it and think about the comics, think about the plot and the characters and all that stuff. But yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful, and I'm really happy that we've been able to do as much as we have.
Mikel also asked you, I would like to ask if there's something similar to test pages, but for covers, some kind of brief or something like that.
Similar to what? Say that again.
Something similar to test pages, skimming sample pages.
No, just doing images.
Mikel, just do a portfolio of your covers. He's a graphic designer, a brilliant one. Just do a portfolio and send it to Mark.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's not a huge, as we've been saying, it's not a huge portion of what we do right now is people doing graphic design covers. There's the Muller ones. I know we have done other ones, but not a ton. Sometimes we've done them for like second print covers and things, but even then, a lot of times we do them internally. We have the folks who work in the Marvel bullpen do them. So I don't know that it would be easy to break in going, here's an example of graphic design covers that I would pitch for this, because it is something that just isn't common. I think it would need to become more of a thing before we start just kind of hiring people to do only that.
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing answer. Ramsey Hassan asked you, how much freedom do the ex-writers have to tell their particular title, by particular stories, I guess he means, in relation to the bigger story that Hickman has crafted?
A ton. There have been times when it's more or less, in the sense that, when we were doing the Ten of Swords crossover that I mentioned earlier, it was a literal chapter by chapter 22 part crossover where everybody had a specific thing to write. Like, it was like, this chapter needs to be this. Mm-hmm. But before that and after that, it's been very open. And what Ten of Swords came out of what they did. Ten of Swords had elements to it that Jonathan had thought of before we started writing all the individual series, but just elements. He didn't go, our first crossover will be about this, and this will happen, and this will happen. It's just that when he was planting his seeds, he was like, at some point, we'll pay off this thing about Apocalypse's family and where they went. At some point, we'll pay off this thing about this thing. At some point, we'll bring this thing back. And those elements got brought in when it became clear, the best thing to do for our big story is to take these elements from what I had, mm-hmm. these elements from what Teeny was doing in Excalibur. Here's how what Jerry did in Marauders so far will tie into that. Here's how, and to varying degrees, what every writer was doing would tie into that. Mm-hmm. But everybody is doing. Jonathan didn't come out of House of X going, here's what the 6 books will be. We came out of House of X going, he knew what his book would be for the mm-hmm. most part, but going, we want to have other books. Let's figure out who we want to work with, and then let's see what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And so we tapped Jerry, Teeny, Ben. Who was it at that time? Jerry, Teeny, Ben. At the very beginning, Ed Brisson wasn't involved quite yet. He was brought in a little bit later because it was just Jonathan doing 2 books for a moment. And then, and Brian, oh my God, I've just forgotten his name. Brian Edward Hill. Mm-hmm. And so the 4 of them came in, and it was, what books do you want to do? And Jerry came up with a crazy idea for a pirate book. And Teeny was like, I want to explore mutant magic. And Ben was like, I want to dig into like the X-Force, the Black Ops team. And we workshopped together, all of us, like the whole group, what those books would be. There was a really fun meeting where I literally, and I have them somewhere. Maybe I threw them away at this point. I had them in my office. I had a thing of cards where I wrote down the names of like all the big X-Men and going down to relatively small X-Men, like a zillion X-Men on cards, so that we could put them on the table and be like, here are the people that are available for the teams. We don't want them to be on 2 teams each. So let's mm-hmm. talk about who wants who. And we were pulling people. Everybody had their like draft of here's who I want in this book. Here's who I'd want in this book. And my favorite thing is that at one point on Marauders, while Jerry was in the bathroom, Teeny was like, well, he should really have Polaris on his team. And she like tried to put her into his stuff. And he was like, why is Polaris here? It was very random. But it was fun. So they've had a lot of freedom. I mean, Jonathan is always there to bounce ideas off of, and he is a collaborator in the kind of writer's room that we have for X-Men. But at the end of the day, these are their books, and they get to choose the direction they go in. So yeah, absolutely.
How much it is, or how much does it need to be a writer's room, so you can keep the cohesiveness of the books?
Well, I think the way that we're working it is the best version of it that I've been involved in. I mean, I've been involved in varying degrees of connectivity mm-hmm. of books through my whole career, but this is the tightest I've ever had creators working together. And I mean, I think it's working great in that way, because they all support each other. They all like what each other are doing. And whenever we announce a new book, one of the pieces of feedback we get is there's too many X books. Like, how do you expect us to buy 12 a month? And the answer is no, don't. I mean, please do if you want to.
Except if you want to. If you want to.
Right, of course. But people are like, but why are you keeping this one going? It's not good. And I'm like, because other people think it is good. You don't have to buy it. Yeah. I honestly don't think you need to buy all the books to understand them. I don't at all. There are certain touch points that you probably will need to know. So if you want to read, let me pick a random book. If you want to just read Marauders, that's the only book you care about. Are you going to need to read House of X first? Well, probably. I mean, not 100%, but probably, because it's a pretty big deal.
Let's just say it couldn't be bad.
Right. It's probably the best thing. But then if you don't want to read the other books in the series, I think for the most part, you'll be okay. Ten of Swords will be the exception. When you get to Ten of Swords, it really is you need every chapter to get the whole thing.
Yeah.
That said, could you skip it? The whole thing? I guess if you wanted to, sure. They'll bring up the parts that are important afterwards. My point is, we have a big X line, yes, but that's not because we're trying to get you and every reader to buy every one. It's because I believe strongly that the X-Men has lots of different fans who like different things. There are people who say Excalibur is the best book we're publishing, but that X-Force is a complete waste of time and they hate every issue of it. And there are people who say X-Force is the best book that we're publishing and Excalibur is a complete waste of time and they hate every issue they read of it. And that is good because that way both sets of people get the book they like and they really don't have to read the other book. I would rather put out 10 books that 10 different people love than 10 books that one person loves every single one of them. Absolutely. I mean, in a dream world, I'd put out 10 books where 10 people love all 10 of them, but that's not realistic. And so instead, I'm happy that we have books for different tastes. I'm really happy about that.
And there's also a part of, when people ask, oh, why Marvel keeps publishing more and more, X books? My answer is because people buy them. Marvel, let's be honest, Marvel wouldn't publish them if people didn't like them. So people is liking what they're seeing. They want more books. Marvel publish them. The moment people doesn't want them, Marvel will cut down on X books. It's just like that.
Yeah, it's a very simple system. It's a very simple system. We put books out, people buy them, we go great, and we put them out more. If they stop, the book gets canceled. Like that, it's so straightforward.
So any conspiracy you guys can think about why Marvel is putting so many X books is not a conspiracy. It's because they sell.
Because people buy them. That's it. And because we like them. I mean,
ideally
because we think they're a good idea.
Yeah. Victor Q says, hi from Colombia, Mr. White. Do you have any advice for aspiring artists? And what did you look in an artist portfolio? Thank you very much. That gets to a question that I always ask. So let me complete that question. What's the things that you need to see in a pitch or portfolio, and the things that make you roll your eyes, like, oh my God, not again. Why do you do this to me?
Good question. Well, let's start with art-wise first, since that's what he was asking about. But the things that you want to look for, first of all, I mean, it depends what you're trying to show that you can do, but generally speaking, you're going to absolutely want a portfolio that shows sequentials, not just that you know how to draw. You need to be able to do storytelling as well. That's a huge and important part of it. The other thing is you want a portfolio. That shows off the thing that you are good at, and you don't want a portfolio that you need to excuse. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but often I have seen plenty of people do a thing where they go, "Here are my pages. I'm showing you this because I'm a penciler. I'm not really good at inks, so don't think about the inks." And it's like, well, then don't show me the inks. Don't show me the thing that you're not good at.
Don't do it.
Or same with, like, I colored these myself. They're not that great. Then do black and whites, because show me the thing that you want to show off and that you're good at. Ideally, there should be no caveats to your portfolio. It should speak for itself and show me why I should hire you. Another thing is you do want to be aware of what Marvel does as well, in the sense that I have also had plenty of people, I mean, again, plenty isn't a slight expression. I have had portfolios shown to me by people who are immensely talented that I'm like, I don't know what comic I would ever put this in, or I don't know how we would use this style of art in a comic book. Like, there was a guy who had amazing talent with pencil, but it was all about like intense shading in pencil. And I'm like, that's super cool, but that's not what we do.
That's not what we do.
And so you want to be aware of your audience, because of course there are exceptions. Of course you can look at Marvel and go, but what about this guy who is different from everyone else? Yes, but I'm sure if you look at that person's story of how they got to where they are, it's not going to be, they just were randomly hired. Like, it's going to be like they did something else and got notable, and then Marvel brought them in, or they started at a more normal style and got weirder and weirder as they went, or something like that.
Or they did something in the indies, you know, in you notice it. It's going to be a big fit for this book, for this particular book, right?
Absolutely. So then that actually does bring up one of the big notes I always want to give people about trying to get work at Marvel, which is that, of course, I encourage them to do that. But that being said, don't make working for Marvel the end all be all of your goals. If you want to make comic books, there are lots of places to make comic books. Don't limit yourself to, no. I only want to draw or write, because this happens with writers all the time too. I only want to draw or write Spider-Man. So I don't care about trying anywhere else. Well, then you're limiting yourself in a way that probably isn't going to ever work. You should be open to doing other work, because honestly, the place we get most of our people, both writers and artists, is from seeing work they've done published. We do hire people from portfolios. It does happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. Although, again, on the art side, not so much on the writing side. Writing side, we pretty much only hire people who have been published. But on the art side, we do it. But most people will have seen, because again, there are so many places to make comic books nowadays. There are, I couldn't even tell you how many comics are published per month. It's a huge number. So, and the other thing that gives you, in addition to being able to see the quality of your work, it also shows that you can finish something. Because that is always a risk with portfolios as well, that you go, oh, these 5 pages are amazing. Well, those 5 pages took them 5 months to do. So of course they're amazing. Can they draw a comic book that has to come out? And if you have one that's been printed, the answer is yes. And now again, you still, depending on what it is, that could have taken them a year, who knows? But at least you go, they finished a thing. And the same is true with writers. On the writing side, one of the big advices I would give to writers, and this depends on where your level is, whether this is helpful. I mean, one of the most basic things is that ideas are the easy part. And that's the thing a lot of people don't know, because a lot of people will say, well, I have an idea for a story and I want to be a writer. And it's like, well, that's honestly, ideas are easy and cheap. Everybody's got ideas. We'll get into a room, we'll come up with ideas. Now, some people have better ideas than others. I'm not going to say there aren't better ideas than others, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your idea is. What matters is execution of ideas. So you can have the best idea ever had, but if you can't show me, and I can show you that I have written something and I have finished it and it has been able to achieve the storytelling that I wanted from it, you're not going to get hired. You can't get hired at Marvel off of an idea, flat out. And that does mean it's much harder for writers in some ways, because like we're talking about portfolio, you can hand me a portfolio and I can look at it, and in a moment I can know if I like it or not. I can go, oh, this is great, or oh, it's not there yet, in a heartbeat. you can't hand me a piece of writing and have me know. If you give me, I mean, obviously depends on what it is too. If you give me a comic, I'll be like, well, I have to read this whole comic to know if it's good. It's going to take me whatever, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. If you've only written prose, even worse, because then it's like, here's a novel. Well, oh geez, maybe I'll read this. Tough. It's difficult. That's a lot of time I'm committing to it. So it's difficult. It's difficult to get. It's difficult to break in as a writer cold. It's because, again, we don't accept cold pitches. We don't accept, if you're sending us an idea for a story, we legally are like, I'm not reading that, and we're probably not even going to respond. We can't read it. Sometimes we will get inquiries from people who will send us as writers, here's a link to stuff that I've written, or I am a person who wrote this, and maybe we have already read it even, or we go, oh, that was actually good. And then we might talk to people or things like that. And then say, do you have ideas? And we have like forms you have to fill out before that and things like that. It's a process. Mm-hmm. And actually, now that I say it, I think the same is true for artists in the sense that we have tryout scripts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That we will send to you to folks, and it'll be like, here's whatever 5 pages of stuff between, what's the common one is Iron Fist and
the Defenders one, the Iron Fist and
Elektra.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've seen about 1,000 versions of this Iron Fist and Elektra scene, but I think that for the same legal reasons, if you are just like, well, I have an idea for a story with Spider-Man, we're really not supposed to even look at that, because it's like, oh, now you wrote a thing. We are not supposed to read it. If it's a Superman one, we're like, great, show us a Superman one. So where was I going with that? Submitting ideas. So so the same with writers. If your goal is to make comic books, there are so many opportunities out there to make comic books. You can even do it yourself, team up with an artist and come up with stories and just start making comics. That's what I did. I mean, my comics are not probably that good. I haven't read them in probably a decade. So, but I wrote and drew my own comics and I don't even think I'm that good of an artist, but I wanted to be making stories. Like that's the thing I cared about, was making stories. So I wrote and drew my own comics, posted them on the internet, and it's not like I got famous off them. Nobody cared, but the people who read them were like, that was fun. And then the same thing, that's always the biggest piece of advice I give people is, if you want to be making stuff, make stuff. There's nothing holding you back, because the best advertisement for your abilities to make stuff is having made something. So the thing I did right before I worked at Marvel, in the like 4 years, I think before that, I was in grad school, and at the school I was at, there was a free format radio station. So I joined up the radio station, and most people just use that to play whatever kind of music they want, which is fun. But like I said, I wanted to make stories. So I said, okay, I'm going to join the radio theater department, and I'm going to make radio serials. And so I started writing, and at first we started doing them live, but then it was too difficult. So I started writing and recording, and like recording, editing, putting together these radio serials every week. And it was honing all the exact skills I need as a comic book editor, because it was wrangling a bunch of creative people. At first I wrote them all myself, but then I brought in other folks that I was working with to write them as well. So I would write some and they would write some, and I would get all my friends to act in them, and I would record them all every week. And then I would spend a ton of time editing them on the audio software every week and putting it together all on a deadline so that we could put out a radio show every week. And that is the exact skills I use now. Working on creative stories, trying to make them the best they are possible, but doing it on a deadline and wrangling a bunch of creative people in that endeavor. It's actually, on the editorial side, it's actually kind of surprising to me to figure out, as I've been working at Marvel, that one of the most common backgrounds for editors is theater. For that reason, because it isn't a solitary endeavor. It is let's get all the creative people, let's do a thing, let's put on a production. And in a way, doing a comic book is that.
Yep.
It's just not live.
There's a couple pieces of advice that I always give, new. Then we'll get to the things you hate in pitches, but
right.
but a couple pieces of advice that I always give, to young artists. One is in the sense of what you said, justifying things. Is a Latin saying that is justificatio non petita accusatio manifesta, which means if you have to justify yourself, that means there's something wrong. So never do it. And the other one is something that CB told me a lot of years ago about artists, and it's the perfect phrase that I always tell the young ones: is editors love people who finishes things.
Oh yeah,
that's it. So when they come with samples, it's like I don't hear from them in 6 months. It's like we're gonna have a problem. Why? Because I need to see things every week. If I don't, you're either doing a comic, publishing it, and as you said, right now the best thing is that they can publish everywhere, right? They can do it online, weblogs, they can do it, web comics, webtoons. There's a million ways that they can publish stuff and then tell you, please check this link with my stuff so you can read or see the art, right? So it's just publish your stuff so you as editors are able to watch it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it goes back to the thing I said. Like, so on the writer side, ideas are the easy part. It's following through. So if I'm not hiring people who come up with ideas in the same way I don't hire artists who can think of cool things to draw. Like, you have to hire people who execute, who can finish a thing. They have written stories. The ability to write, to have written something, is more important than the thought of what to write. And the same with art. The ability to say, look, I was able to complete an issue of a comic. I'm not going to say that's literally more important than the ability to draw well, because they're both pretty important. But in some ways it is. And again, if people are going for, they only want to do cover art, that's a different matter. But still, even so, like, you want to show that you can finish those. You don't want to show sketches for covers. You show, no, here's finished covers. I finished the work.
Okay, now, so what's the things that make you roll your eyes when you see it in a pitch by a writer or by an
writer?
artist?
Well, it's tough. So, I talked a little bit about the writer stuff or the artist stuff. I mean, because it was, some of the using styles that we can't use, and it's like, that's cool, or various things. But on the writer side,
sorry, I still remember when one of the Marvel's editors got in Spain somebody that gave him as samples porn versions of Marvel characters. I am not kidding. And then
okay, that's not ideal.
Laughing like crazy, text me, come to the office where we're checking portfolios, just like lying like laughing nonstop and almost crying. And I go, what's going on? Everything is okay. It's like, come here. And he shows me, it's like, the guy thought we could do this. And I was like, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
That's pretty amazing.
So I just remember that.
I'm trying to remember if I've ever received like porn. I don't think like full porn. I definitely have received like nudity, although not of Marvel characters. That's the thing. Like, it'll be like, well, they did a book where there's nudity and they put it in. That's maybe not the best idea either, to give nudity to the Marvel editors. But at least then it's not the Marvel characters, and I sort of understand. If it was actual Marvel characters, that's bananas.
It was actually Marvel characters.
Yeah,
it was Wolverine and a redhead that you know who.
Yeah, listen, it's a way to be remembered. It's not a way to get a job.
The phrase that we kept saying was, that was epic. If in a way, probably he wasn't expected, but it was epic.
Yeah.
So on the writing side, roll your eyes, pitch.
On the writing side, that's a great question. So it's tough. Well, I mean, the first one is the easiest one, is the thing I just said, which is they are like, I have an idea for something. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Ideas. First of all, I don't want to hear your idea. I can't hear your idea. But second of all, that's not what we buy. The other thing is, there's a weird thing that and I sort of get why people do it. So I shouldn't even really say I roll my eyes, but I do a little bit, which is that writers will go, I have an idea for a character that never succeeds and how to make them work. And you go, I get it. I see the appeal. I understand that you're going, I'm looking at what Marvel's doing and I'm seeing what they're not doing. And what they're not doing is to use an example that we had a lot of pitches for, maybe, I'm trying to remember when this was, maybe 8 years ago. There was a ton of pitches for Cloak and Dagger. Mm-hmm. People went, well, there's nothing going on with Cloak and Dagger. So everybody had a take on Cloak and Dagger. And so when you have those like weird, but then you look at those characters and you go, yeah, but like, don't you think that part of the reason we're not using them is because they haven't worked, and like you need to, I don't know. I shouldn't even say it because again, that's not 100% true. Because like I said, I do get it and I appreciate it. And I should also say, so I'm going back on my own thing. I was going to say, sometimes you get work that isn't the pitch you made because of the pitch you made.
Makes sense.
So you could do a pitch for Cloak and Dagger that is good and interesting, but that I go, well, obviously we're not going to do a Cloak and Dagger, but I like that you did something smart.
But that takes you to another book or another idea, of course, yeah.
Like that happened. I think I can talk about this. This is probably okay. Well, I mean, I don't think he'll mind. A zillion years ago, before Charles Soule worked at Marvel, I was editing Thunderbolts, and he pitched me an Elektra miniseries because we'd met up. I had been a fan of his work on his indie stuff, and we met up. And he was like, "So, what are you interested in hearing a pitch?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really know. I can't promise anything. I can't say like we're definitely can do a book about this, but I'm working on this characters. I'm working on these characters." And he went, "Well, what who do you think from Thunderbolts?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think Elektra could be interesting, but she's a character that is difficult." Because one of the things about Elektra I've always said is that if you look at, and this might not still be true, I'd have to think about the stuff since then, but if you look at the best Elektra stories classically, she's definitely not the main character, and she's kind of barely a character. Like she's an idea and a force of nature and a cipher and a problem for the main character. Even in like books named after her, you know what I mean? Elektra Assassin, she's not the main character. She's like the monster. Yeah. Or the first arc of Brian Bendis's Elektra, which I thought was really good, which people don't really talk about anymore, but I thought was pretty good. She's not the main character. And so Charles went away, and I'm not going to tell what the pitch was, but he came up with a pitch based on that idea that we had talked about. That he was like, okay, you're right, and here's my spin on that I thought was great. But I couldn't actually do an Elektra series. That wasn't actually possible. But he really impressed me. And when I needed another writer to come in on Thunderbolts, I went, would you be interested? And he jumped in and he came up with great ideas on that too. So I don't want to spoil that pitch just because, again, who knows? Maybe it'll happen.
Exactly. Who knows? So one day you can use it. So keep it to yourself.
So I've already gone back. You asked me for something I hate, and I said I hate this, except that I don't hate this because it could work. I guess I get aggravated. It's not fair to writers. I get aggravated at those things because of, like I said, the cycle of it. The fact that everybody pitches the same thing and they don't realize they're pitching the same thing. So that like the second or third time I get it, I'm like, okay, here we go again. And then it keeps going. Like it doesn't stop. There is a thing, and I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to offend all the people who have pitched it. But there is a thing that in the Jonathan Hickman era, I would say 80% of the people who bring me ideas have pitched. And I know and it's not, I mean, again, it's not bad on them. Like they're doing the thing I said. They're looking at what we are doing and going, oh, you know what they're not doing is this. And it's like, right, there's a reason. And maybe there's a reason. And like I said, everybody sees it and goes, well, then I'll pitch that. And I guess none of them realize that they all are pitching that, which is fine. But from the inside, I'm like, well, there's another one. No, thank you. Thank you for the pitch.
I think it was 3 years ago or so, that a lot of writers, I was talking to about whatever else, they kept telling me during 6 months period, it was really funny. Oh, I'm pitching Spider-Woman.
Right.
during 6 months, and I was like, why is everybody pitching Spider-Woman? And suddenly I was like, oh, they're not doing a book right now, and I was like, maybe they're not doing it for a reason. I don't. Maybe they should think about that. There's a reason why they're not doing the book. So even if 60 people is pitching for Spider-Woman, maybe it won't happen because Marvel is not trying to do it.
Right.
Literally, right?
It's a lot of times it's not. I mean, most of the time we're not just like that character shouldn't have a book. A lot of times it's just like we've tried a bunch of different things with that character and none of them have worked. So we would need a new thing. And there's also one of the things that is said about it. I think this is a Tom Brevoort quote, is that there's the 3 C's for every project. There's creator, character, and concept. And that obviously you need a combination of those 3 in a big way. So the problem is, though, if it's a unknown creator with a character that isn't a successful character, oh wow, does that concept have to be amazing? And like I said, generally speaking, we don't buy ideas. We buy stories, and we hire people that we think are good. So you could be a good writer that we're like, that's a good writer, but they're not a name. They're not going to bring a lot of readers to the table. They're pitching on a character that has 10 failed series. They've got an interesting idea, but if that idea isn't like revolutionary, and not only revolutionary, but easy to pitch, easy to say in previews catalog, holy cow, look at this new spin on this character. Then it's a hard sell, because you want to have 2 of those. I mean, I would say it's much easier for and this is sort of it's difficult. It's difficult to break in. It's easier for a new writer to become to be successful on an established character for that reason. So if you're going to write a Spider-Man story and you've got a great idea for a Spider-Man story, now all of a sudden, even as a new writer, you've got 2 of the 3 C's, right?
Yep.
Because you've got a popular character and you've got a great idea. Great. And now you can hopefully make your name on that. And then by the time you're pitching your next project, maybe people know who you are. But of course, that's also difficult, because how do you land a gig on Spider-Man as an experienced writer? And the answer is, I don't know. It's hard. Sometimes we do annuals, sometimes we do tie-ins, and we bring in, you always just have to be on the lookout. And the answer is, like I always said, don't rely on Marvel to be the place that you start writing or drawing. Do other work, show it to us, and then we will have needs for writers and artists, and we will look all over the place for them. And if you're talented, it'll win out.
Absolutely. Okay, so Dante Crotogini asks, speaking of covers, how do you decide which artist will draw which cover? I love those Christian Ward covers on New Mutants. And I'd love to see Ward doing interiors of New Mutants too. On that note, how do you decide the interior artist, particularly fill-in artist? Dante, are you asking about something in particular? Are you an artist, maybe? Anyway.
Great question. So that's like the casting process is real complicated. Specifically, the Christian Ward New Mutants. That's Annalise Bissa is my associate editor, and she's editing that book herself now. So I think it was her idea to bring him in on that. But the casting process in general is, like I said, it's complicated. So there's a lot that goes on. We have a department called the Talent Management Department. That's Ricky Purdon, Dan Eddington, Emily Newcomen helps out as well. And they are working. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe what they do. They work with the talent on larger scheduling things and on all the business side of things, and on keeping them working at Marvel in a long-term relationship, especially when it comes to working across offices, So if there's somebody that we have an art relationship with, that we are happy with as a company, that we all have enjoyed their work, Ricky will try to get them more work, and keep that relationship going so that we can keep enjoying working with them. So if I'm working with, I don't even know, I'm trying to think of an example that isn't, I'm just going to throw names out there and they're not realistic. Okay. So I'm working with Phil Noto. Now, in real life, I know what Phil Noto's doing for a little while now, so don't worry about it. But if I'm working with Phil Noto and the book he's working on is ending, Ricky might be like, well, obviously Phil is a guy we love and he's a guy we have a relationship with. And if Jordan doesn't have any more work for him, we'll put him on some lists. And when Tom's casting a book, Ricky might say, here's some options of people who are coming available. Phil Noto's coming available. This guy's coming available. That guy's coming available. And Tom might go, oh, thinking about the book that he's working on, or again, me, I'm thinking about the book I'm working on. I'm like, okay, this is the kind of book it is. What's the style that will fit with them? And there's a lot that goes into that. So you're weighing the style, you're weighing when availability is. Sometimes, and this is when it gets kind of like a bummer, sometimes you are weighing the potential of sales on a project versus another project, which it's a real bummer. I hate it because sometimes that means you're going, we're going to take that person off that book that has got lower sales because we're going to put them on this thing that I think will have higher sales, and they are great, and they will make more money, and the book will make more money, and the company will make more money. But as an editor who has books that are not selling as well, your heart breaks because you're like, I want this book is a book I love, and I want it to do well, but I'm in this system of Marvel, and I have to do what's right for the whole thing as well. And we always do our best for that book and try to keep it going as long as possible. And we'll take the one person off and try to find somebody to fit on well. Anyway, so how do we cast? That's a big thing. We have meetings. We have emails where, like I said, Ricky will bring us, here's people that we're working with. Sometimes we will say, hey, what about this guy? What is that guy working on? And he will, if they're already working at Marvel, he'll say, oh, they're working on this and they'll be done by that date. And maybe we can make this work. Or if they're not working at Marvel, he'll go, I happen to know because I'm in communication with all these, because he's got his fingers all over the industry. That's weird. I don't like that. That's gross. He's like a spider, and he's got
his brain powers extend to everywhere. This is it.
He's got a lot of contacts, and he's in communication with a lot of And so sometimes I'll say, like, what about this guy? And he's like, oh, he's working on an Image book. He's going to be on it for another 6 months. Or he's working at DC, but he's about to come free, so maybe we can try it. Or if he doesn't know, he'll probably at least have their contact information. So he'll go, here's his email. Feel free to reach out. That sounds awesome. And we'll do it. It's a collaborative thing. Oh, and also, by the way, I haven't mentioned the writers. We also do talk to the writers. Not because we give the writers veto power on artists. Like, I don't want to make it sound like that, but in the sense that the writers are working on the books before the artists a lot of the time. So we will say to them, what kind of a book tonally do you think this is going to be? What kind of a feel? And so sometimes we'll go, like, give us like a dream list of here's some artists that you'd love. And even if we literally know for a fact, it's like, well, none of these people can do it, but it gives us an idea of the style that they're thinking of for this book. Mm-hmm. And it gives us the opportunity to go, okay, let's look for someone who can do that sort of a vibe. Mm-hmm. So we'll take that information. We'll go to talent management. We'll talk to folks. We'll just brainstorm people. And that's casting in general. Mm-hmm. And it's basically that way for covers and interiors. The big difference, obviously, is that, well, I don't even want to say that's the big difference. There's a lot to consider. Sometimes for fill-ins, interiors, you want to get it tonally as similar as possible. Mm-hmm. But other times, depending on the story, if you're going, this is a one-shot and it feels a little different than the comic, maybe you go, let's go very different. And sort of the same goes for covers. There are books on which I go, I think we should have a cover that suggests the art style of the inside in some way. I mean, well, for sure, a lot of times people do their own covers, but even if we're not doing that, but other times you go, yeah, maybe we don't need to. Maybe we have a painted cover, even though the inside is very traditional. It kind of goes project by project. It really does. I mean, I have seen books. I don't want to name names. I have seen books at Marvel even where the covers have been so cool, and then I will pick up the book and it's like the interior art is so different that I'm like, I feel like I was sold a bill of goods. You know what I mean? Like, I bought it off of the strength of how cool that cover was, and then I opened it and I was like, this isn't that. Mm-hmm. So we obviously try to avoid that. That's a risk of doing the different tones. But sometimes, again, other times you can do a thing where you're going, well, we're doing two different cool things instead of one cool thing. So I know that's not a great answer, because my answer is it's different all the time.
It works.
There's a lot of meetings and a lot of talking. That's how we do it.
Yeah, and it changes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, as you said, you try
We're always trying
painted covers for interiors that think is going to match and going to fit, and suddenly you realize, oh, it's not working, etc., etc. So it's trial and error, right? And experience. It's also a big part of you missing or being able to make it work, because for you it's also your career advances, and as we say, you know better, than to, okay, this is going to work or not. You know better because you've done it a lot of times.
I mean, that's another Tom Brevoortism, and it's hard not to quote Tom Brevoort when you've worked at Marvel for 12 years, like I have, because he talks a lot about things, and he's wise, not just because he talks a lot. But another Tom Brevoortism is always that this isn't science, this is alchemy. It's not as simple as if you take these ingredients, they add up to that. It's you're trying to throw these things together and hoping that magic happens. You're thinking about, I know the feel and flavor of this writer, and I know the feel and flavor of this artist, and maybe if I smash them together, something awesome will come out. And same with this cover artist and this, and this interior artist. Can they be tonally similar enough that it makes the whole package awesome? And sometimes you do it and you're like, that's great. But it's not even as simple as, well, now I found out that works, because sometimes then you try it again and it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And sometimes you can't even know that an artist and a writer are not going to like each other.
Right.
They are amazing, and suddenly you realize, oh, so whatever stupid thing, they are not, a good match, because they are not liking working together. So you just have to make a decision on, you go here. Even if it's working on the book, they just don't like working with each other. So you just have to decide, right?
But at the same time, the opposite is true too.
The opposite happens. Yeah.
Sometimes I will pair people up, and they will get along so great. Like, I know, obviously, I want Marvel to do well, but at the same time, I also do feel really kind of happy in a way. Maybe Marvel doesn't think I should, when a team I put together goes off and does something at Image. And I know that's ooh, but hang on. But I feel good about it because here's a dumb example. Charles Soule and Giuseppe Camuncoli. They're doing an amazing book at Image now. They started working together on Darth Vader. And I just am a huge fan of Camo. And I've been working with Charles, obviously. And I was like, let's make this happen. They would be great on Darth Vader together. And they did, and they hit it off, and they've had a great time working together. And I'm not saying I take credit for their book. Of course not. They are talented guys, and they are responsible for their success. But I do feel like it makes me feel good. I'm like, I helped make that happen in some way. And that's terrific. So anytime that happens, and it happens more than you think, because I wasn't involved in this, but I'm trying to think. Donnie and Donnie Cates and Ryan Stegman, I'm pretty sure they were just put on that book together and then just hit it off amazingly. I might be remembering it wrong, because again, that's not my book. But I'm pretty sure the editor brought them together and they just became amazing team that synergized so well.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can give you another perfect example. Is right now it's Carla Pacheco and Pera Perez on Spider-Man. It was, Jake just put them together. They didn't know each other at all. And their synergy, you see them working together. It's like they've known each other for forever. And they go crazier and crazier. And you're like, they didn't know each other until, well, they don't know each other in person, in fact. But,
they've never met. I'm sure,
heard of the other until, I don't know, 1 year ago. So when that happens for you guys, that's awesome. That's magic, right?
Absolutely. It's the best feeling. And again, oh man, I'm going to quote Tom again. And I know you've had Tom on already, right? So have him on again, and you don't need me, I guess. But the other thing being that he always says, if you do the casting well, that's 90% of the job. You don't have to. The rest of the work gets easier, and that's absolutely true. If you can land the casting right, you just sit back and let the comic happen.
Yeah.
Not entirely.
Not
Editors are still needed.
Give some credit. Give some credit. Don't go that far. Look, Dante also asked, can you talk a bit about Gary Duggan taking over the X-Men title? It surprised me that Hickman was stepping down and made me wonder if the other writers are thinking of wrapping up their runs.
Well, well, an important thing here's the first thing I want to mention about it is I know this is kind of a controversial thing to say, but I think the age of hundreds of issues in a comic book series are over. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a bummer. I was a reader back in the, I started when I was freaking single digits. I don't even know how old. I was very, very young. I remember reading Kraven's Last Hunt when it was coming out on newsstands. So that would have made me like 6. So I've been a reader for a long time. And when I started reading Spider-Man, I started reading in the late 200s, and I started seriously collecting in the early 300s. And there was never any question about, am I going to read every issue? No, of course not. There's no way for me to get those old issues as a child. And then when I got a little bit older, and I started reading Excalibur, and that was a slightly lower number. It was in like the 30s or 40s when I started reading. It was like, oh, maybe I can actually track down every issue. Like, what a delight that is. Those days are kind of like just over. And I will miss them, but I just don't think it's realistic to expect them to come back. So I think the idea that books will come in phases where they start with ones and then they go till they go, and then a new one comes in. It's just kind of a fact of comics nowadays. It just is. Yeah. So are books gonna wrap up and come back, and wrap up and come back and relaunch in different ways? The answer is yes. In general, they are. It's just the shape of the industry. I was actually working on X-Men as an assistant editor when Uncanny X-Men, the very last Marvel book to be relaunched, was relaunched, and I fought against it. Now, I had no power at the time. I was an assistant editor, but I was like, Nick Lowe, my boss, we can't do this. We can't read. It's the only one. It's the only book that is still in the triple digits. No other book, every other book, some of them say they're in triple digits, but it's all lies. They've gone back to the numbering. This is the only one to have been consistent since the 1960s. We can't. And I lost, and that is over now. So back to your specific question, Jerry Duggan. Jerry is doing this book. It's going to be awesome. And again, this is all part of what Hickman is doing. If you look at Hickman's X-Men series, it's pretty clear to see, especially in retrospect, because he made it like on panel clear, but it's pretty clear to see that there's no team called X-Men. It's just stuff. It's Tales from Krakoa, a lot of them featuring Cyclops, but not even all of them featuring Cyclops. And they're all big things that will have an impact on the whole of the nation and of the larger story of the world of X that we are telling. It's been great, but it's not a book about a team called the X-Men. And again, he put that on the page where he came out and said it. There hasn't been an X-Men team since Krakoa, and I think it's time. And Cyclops said he's going to have an election for the heroes of Krakoa, which we are building up to. In fact, literally as we speak, we had a fan vote for the 7th member of the team. We haven't revealed who the first 6 are, but the 7th member of the team, we got a fan vote, and we've been revealing over the last 4 days, and then tomorrow is the final reveal, who lost the fan vote. So 8 of the 10 nominees have been revealed to not have won already up on Marvel's Twitter and Instagram. We made one-page comics with Zeb Wells and a handful of artists, and they're really fun. But anyway, Cyclops is having that election, and it was Jonathan's idea that we should have a book, though. The book should become the X-Men book, where it actually is the hero team that goes out and saves the world. Like, this is the X-Men, the biggest superheroes in the world. But that wasn't a book he wanted to do. He's interested in that higher level mutant society, sociological look and based approach to storytelling in some ways. And so we talked about it, and Jerry seemed like a great fit for it. Jerry, I've been working with for, I think it's just about 10 years now, which is insane. But working with him for just about 10 years, and he's super talented. He loves the X-Men. He's been doing great work on Marauders. He's been doing great work on Cable, and he cooked up a pitch that we love for what's going to be going on with this team. He put together the 6 members of the team. And again, I say he put together, he did, but we have a group. So he didn't just go away and come back and go, here's what we're publishing. He talked with Jonathan, he talked with me, we presented to the whole group. We all had ideas. But he came up with some really awesome stuff, both for who's on the team and for what happens with them. And for I mean, he's pitched a whole ton of story, but we've got the first year of it, pretty much locked in, and it's great. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited for people to read it and to see what it's like. And also, we got the secret weapon. Pepe Larraz is so good, man.
Yep.
He's so amazing. Jonathan's good and all, but Pepe Larraz is, I think, the biggest superstar to work on this era of X-Men by a long shot.
Yep.
He elevates every book he works on because he just pours everything into it, and it is amazing. And this first issue of X-Men is no exception. First of all, Planet Size X-Men is coming out in June. That is mind-blowing, the stuff he drew in there. We're getting the colors in from Marte every day now. Marte Gracia, who's coloring it. Every page is just this is so good. And then meanwhile, Pepe is drawing X-Men, and he's knocking it out of the park. This series is going to be amazing. People are going to love it. I really think so. I think they'll like the team.
He's a genius and a workhorse at the same time. He's amazing. Pepe is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Look, Rocío Vidal tell you hello there. Jordan is wise AF. I guess it means that's fuck. With his words, the finished, not perfect philosophy is really important to keep going. She's an amazing Spanish artist, so he's agreed with you.
Yes.
Marowak Oscuro, with X-Men's relaunch after Hellfire Gala, will there be series discontinued or relaunched?
Will there be what?
He says, with the X-Men relaunch after Hellfire Gala, will there be series discontinued or relaunched?
Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Yes, but that is not a thing that is just going to happen there. It's the thing that will happen on and off. We're doing our best in the X line to take control of the narrative of our series, and we want, if at all possible, for all of those decisions to be based in story and not based on as much as possible, because sales does matter, but not based on the sales department telling us your book is canceled or we need a new book, or because those things happen, that they will tell us if a book's not selling well enough, and they will tell us we need, another series for this reason. But we are doing our damnedest to always have a plan ready for those things, so that we are going, sometimes we will end a book because it's over, not because it's canceled. Here's an example. There's been a couple of books that ended, and I think that have ended or are about to end, and they're all deliberate. Fallen Angels, we were like, that's the end of that story, and we don't want to continue it in that place right now, so we're going to end it. Sales-wise, we could have kept that book going, but we made our decision, and we said, no, we'd like it to end there, and we're going to do different things. Same with Cable. The Cable book, we've recently announced that 12 is the last issue, and that was the plan. We went into that book going, we're going to do 12. Now, again, in the old days of comics, we would have said a 12-issue maxi series, I guess. If that came out in the 80s, for sure.
Yep.
That's just not the way things go now. That's just not a style we do all the time. No, sometimes people do. I think that the problem is everybody's always trying to game the system and like you said, read conspiracies into things. So there are all these things of well, if a book's ending, then it doesn't count, and if it's a mini series, it doesn't matter. And we're like, well, no, none of that is true. We're trying to do the stories as best we can. First of all,
but the problem is that if you announce, and I get really mad when people get angry about this. If you announce it's a maxi series, it's a 12-issue maxi series, people is not going to buy it. because as
Right.
you said, they're going to think, it doesn't count, and you try to explain it over and over again. It doesn't matter in their head, since you said maxi series, and then they complain when you say no, it was planned since the beginning. Like, no, that's a lie because you didn't announce it. I didn't announce it because you couldn't fucking buy it.
Yes, exactly that. And I don't understand what the problem is, in the sense that, again, Cable's going to be 12 issues. So that's, in a normal version, it would have been a year, but with pandemic and other reasons, we've had skip months. So it's longer than a year. But that's at least a year of comics. Like, you're mad because, like, you need a 5-year commitment from a comic book? Like, get out of here. Like I said, you're not going to get that nowadays.
Yep.
You're not going to get that anywhere. And I think what we're doing is we're leaning into it and trying to say, what can we do with that creatively, rather than do the most crass commercial version of it, where we're just like, well, there's no reason to do this, but like, except for money, but we're going to relaunch it. Like, it's like, no, we're going to try to do it for story reasons. And this X-Men book that Jerry's writing is about a different thing than Jonathan's was. Mm-hmm. Jonathan's was higher level mutant problems and mutant society impact stuff. Jerry's is about the biggest superheroes of Krakoa, and they go out and they save the world. That is the concept of the book. It's a different book. So it makes sense to relaunch it, I think.
Well, because one is about the world, the society, the implications of it. It's more in a way, general about the X society, to say in a way. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the other one is more into a single group. So it's a completely different concept. So why to continue when you're trying to do something different, right?
Now, if anything, you could say, well, then you shouldn't have called Jonathan's book X-Men. You should have called it Krakoa. But come on. We want the book to sell. It's the main book of the X line at that moment. It's called X-Men because there's no X-Men book. Like, it makes sense. There are things that we do at the end of the day also have to make commercial decisions, because we also have to sell books.
Yeah, so. We're Marvel, we're idiots, and we are going to call the X-Men book Krakoa.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. No, nothing. Don't say it. Joe Casabog says, great interview. Thank you. Although interview, no, we're just chatting around, as you can see. There's no paper or anything. JordanDWhite thought you were going to actually mention the Watchtower, which I always thought was hysterical.
The Watchtower?
Yeah, I don't know what he means with
that. Oh, I think he's actually, I bet you he's talking about Guard Duty, which is the name of the superhero radio serial I did.
Oh, okay. Because he says the Watchtower, so I just got lost. I'm sorry.
No, of course. The Watchtower, the religious pamphlet. No, or probably he was thinking of the Watchtower, the Justice League, which is what Guard Duty is sort of based on. It was this radio show I did. The concept of which is, it's called Guard Duty, and it's about this superhero team, the Earth Guard. Mm-hmm. But the show only occurs in their base while they're on guard duty. So it's two characters who are both superheroes sitting around waiting for an emergency to happen. And the show usually ends with an emergency. Like, it'll be like, oh, alert, this guy's attacking. And they're like, gotta go. And they leave. Mm-hmm. And then maybe next episode, when the next two people are sitting around, you probably will find out how that ended. It was a lot of fun to do. And that's the one show that I wrote every episode of. I didn't have anybody else write that because it was the one I don't want to say I liked the most, but I probably did like it the most. It meant the most to me. I was creating my own little superhero universe. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun to do. It's still out there. You can listen to it if you Google Guard Duty JordanDWhite, or just JordanDWhite probably. Mm-hmm. You'll go to my website and there's MP3s of that whole series. I think there were 50 episodes, probably like 10, 15 minutes each. They were a lot of fun. They were a lot of fun to do.
Guys, find it. And then, make it big online, make him rich and all that.
I guess I gotta mention, it was done like over a decade ago. It was done long ago, so I'm sure there's gonna be stuff in there I'm embarrassed by now. There was one episode I'm super proud of, though, that I think about still, and I wonder if I would still think it was good if I listened to it now, and I don't know. It was an episode about there was a speedster in it called Dr. Fast, and he was he's very arrogant, and it was a time travel episode. I told you I'm big on time travel.
We're still going to get there. We're going to get there.
It was a time travel episode, the concept of which is the modern day present Dr. Fast is there, and the Dr. Fast from the past has come back. It's come forward in time from the past, and he's there. And the two of them have a fight, not a physical fight, but like a battle of the wits against each other, where they're fighting about how the older version remembers what the younger version was going to do, and the younger version trying to rebel against it, be like, oh, I'm going to do something you won't think of me doing. And he's like, that's not possible. And then he comes at a way to outsmart his older self, and then the older self has to outsmart it's very complicated time travel, but I actually think it works very well, if I remember correctly. Because I'm very picky about time travel in stories. I'm very picky about it.
We'll get there.
Sure, we will.
Ramsey Hassan says, I'm a fan of your Sailor Moon podcast.
Oh.
Any chance of a cool X-Men Girl Squad comics? Haha.
The great question. So yes, I do a podcast called Sailor Business. We're almost done with the original 200 episode Sailor Moon series. I think we've put out 197 episodes. We're going a little slowly at the end here, which I apologize for. But yeah, we do an episode about each episode of the podcast, and each episode of Sailor Moon is 22 minutes or so, and our podcast is over an hour every time. We talk about it a lot. An all-girl squad X-Men. Yeah, I mean they did one once before. They did it.
With Olivier Coipel and who was writing? Jason? No, it wasn't Jason.
I think it was Brian Wood.
It was Brian Wood. Yeah.
But they did do one for a little while. I wouldn't be opposed to it. That said, sometimes it's weird. Sometimes it's awkward to like. It feels forced in a way, to be like, we've got a zillion X-Men. This time they're just going to exclude men for some reason. And well, that said, honestly, there's probably a good chance that we would do it and people wouldn't even notice, because there are a zillion great women X-Men. It wouldn't be unusual. I mean, I'm trying to think. I think a few of the teams we're doing now are like more women than men, but I don't think any of them are all women. It would be awesome. And I do love Sailor Moon. I'm trying to think if it's 2 times or 3 times. I think 3 times I have tried to do a magical girl series at Marvel, and it always comes close to happening. And then at the last minute they go, no, that's not going to sell. And they tell me no. It's a bummer. It's a real bummer.
They don't know what they're doing in that. Yeah. In the rest of things they do. In that, no, they have to prove that. Guys, start writing emails, letters, sending,
me and
cake, something like that. After the
pandemic. Christina Strain pitched during Secret Wars. We had 2 different pitches. The first one was about a magical girl series based on Scarlet Witch, and we had a lot of fun with that. But then they were like, no, it can't work for Scarlet Witch for these reasons. And we were like, okay, we'll come up with another one. So then we brainstormed Magical Guardian Star Lady, a female version of Star-Lord who's a magical girl. And that, unfortunately, again, it got pretty far along. And then they were like, no, that's not going to sell. Forget it. And we were like, God damn it. It was so many fun ideas in both of those. I'm still bummed that they didn't happen.
It'll happen. Give it time.
Someday.
It'll time. It'll. Okay, so music and storytelling.
All right.
If I ask you, comics, are they rock and roll, jazz, or a symphony?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, wouldn't you say it depends on the comic? I think that comics are
That's the easy way out. That's the easy way out.
That's the easy way out. I know that's the easy way out, but it's the truth. Because
yes, it is the truth.
Because again, Jonathan Hickman. Like Jonathan Hickman's X-Men and From Hell are not the same style of music. They're just not.
Yep.
Like they're both very different, and again that's one of the reasons that comics are great.
But I didn't ask. I'm a tricky bastard, as you know, and I didn't ask comics. I said storytelling.
Oh, wait. So storytelling in general?
Comics is storytelling.
Wait, now I'm even more confused. Okay, comics as storytelling. What style of music are they?
Comics is storytelling in comics, or comics is storytelling, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
For you, it sounds in your head like a symphony.
What does it sound like? Gotcha.
It sounds like jazz, or it sounds like rock and roll.
Well, I mean, it's going to sound like indie rock because that's what I listen to.
Okay.
Like it's gonna sound like weird alternative. It's gonna sound like They Might Be Giants most of the time, or REM or something. Yeah, it is a good comparison though, because again, it is so collaborative. It isn't what it isn't is it isn't a guy playing a guitar alone in his room, or it's not me playing the ukulele on YouTube for sure, because of that alchemy element. It is, if the writer is the person playing rhythm guitar and singing, the artist comes in with a bass line that changes the shape of the song entirely. And the colorist picks up the drums, and all of a sudden the song is transformed. If you ever listen to, I haven't listened to a ton of it, but if you ever listen to or watch the show Song Exploder, like you see where they get into like the nuance of the song. I over the pandemic, I got hugely into REM, a band I was not really a fan of before, but I got hugely into REM. And so I listened to the podcast Song Exploder about Try Not to Breathe, and I watched the episode of the show about Losing My Religion, and it's amazing. And they're a band that so much of the band happens in the alchemy of the songs, that it's not ever pretty much a straightforward thing of, oh, this is a song where this person just wrote a song and it came out. So much of it happens between, well, this guy came in with this riff, and then the bass player changed it this way, and the drummer did this, and then Michael drove around in his car for 6 hours until he came up with a melody that made sense, and they had this name on the demo that based on how it sounded to them, and then he wrote lyrics that fit that title, and it was like, wait, what? Like, all of it is not, but it comes together into an amazing song. And so much of comics really is that, because yes, it starts in the mind of the writer coming up with a story, but as soon as the artist gets their hands on it, they transform it entirely. That's why I mean, the best, here's another piece of advice. The best comic book writers, in my opinion, all seriously reconsider their scripts after the art's done. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
There are definitely folks who are like, no, I wrote it, it's done, like, just letter it. But the best ones take that art and they go, I'm going to look at it again, because what that guy drew, what the artist drew with my words works okay, but I can be inspired by them too. They were inspired by my words, and now I'm going to be inspired back by their art. And it's a great positive feedback loop like that, of positive inspiration. That's what a good comic collaboration is. And that is why, in that way, you want in that way, musically, it's not a studio recording. It's a live show, because they are feeling each other out and playing. They know the song they're going to play, but it might not sound the way they intended, because they hear something in what the other guy's doing, and they're like, I can jam with that. I can go with it.
Because it becomes something else. I always say that the writer has a piece that then gets to the artist, and when the final product is not the writer's, it's not the artist. It's like that third entity they create, right?
Yes.
Like Paul McCartney spoke a lot about that, about the Beatles, that something, he created a song or something, and then suddenly George Harrison came with a riff. And I was like, I never thought about that. So it became something else that inspired him to go in another direction, or Lennon. So it was never his, I composed the songs with John, but it was never what we composed. It was what, when they heard the music or the lyrics, they took them somewhere else.
So now going back to your very original thing, it's definitely not symphonic music, because that's written out on the page and everybody plays what they're supposed to play. And I'm not saying there's no personal input into that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a giant score that has all the notes written out. It's going to end up being much more like rock music, because again, what is rock music? Rock music is a thing where, not always, but a lot of the time, especially the biggest stuff, you've got people who aren't formal musicians trained, right? They're people who learned on their instruments, going, here's a song I came up with. And then, like you said, the rest of the band is like, all right, what can we do with that? Mm-hmm. Elvis Costello and the Attractions, right? Another guy I'm huge in. He would write songs and do these very relatively simple demos. And then he would get in the studio with the Attractions and they would be adding stuff to it. Steve Naive would be adding a thing on the organ that he never thought of. The bass player, who I know he now hates, but the bass player was doing amazing, crazy runs on the bass that are like, oh, that makes the song feel different. Mm-hmm. My favorite album of all time is an Elvis Costello album. It's called Get Happy. Mm-hmm. And 20 songs, but one of the things that makes that album work so well is that he wrote all these songs and he brought them in, and then they went, I don't know, let's give it like a Motownish feel. And it doesn't really sound like Motown, but the thing that they created on that record is the four of them going like, this is the kind of feel we're going for. And they created that feel together. And mm-hmm. if it wasn't Elvis Costello and the Attractions, if it was Elvis Costello on his own, if it was Elvis Costello and the Imposters, who he's with now, if it was Elvis Costello and the Costello Show from later in his career, it wouldn't be that album. And that is the same thing with comics. Jonathan Hickman writing X-Men, he had his ideas that he brought, but if it wasn't Pepe Larraz and R.B. Silva on House of X and Powers of 10, it wouldn't be what it is. And if it wasn't Leinil Yu on those issues of X-Men that he did, it wouldn't be what it is. And the same is true across the board. It is truly a collaboration. So in that way, I do think it feels a lot like the way a lot of popular rock music happens. So
you don't agree with the Brits, because the Brits always tell me to a T, it's punk.
Oh, I mean, but you know what? That's the punk ethos too. Elvis Costello doesn't sound like punk, but he is punk.
It is. Yeah, that's true.
So punk is similar. Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's hard because punk, to say it's punk and be working on like super corporate comics feels I feel like that's an insult to punk in the same way, although corporate music does punk too now, right? So punk has officially been bought and sold.
There's people who can say that, but certainly, when Grant Morrison told me punk, which are like, well, it's Grant Morrison. Of course, he can say that because
sure.
But all the others, like, why do you all Brits just say it's punk? You don't write the same way. You just don't. It's like you guys doing the same thing. No, you don't. Peter Milligan doesn't write at all. Like Jamie Delano to say something, or Neil Gaiman, or any of the new British writers. But they go with punk. For them, it's that.
You know what I think, and I think also punk has a slightly different meaning in Britain than it does in America. Yep. Like again, when I would hear people talk about Elvis Costello as punk, I would be like, at first, because again, punk to me wasn't an ethos, it was a sound. I was like, no, punk is like heavily what is the word? Heavily distorted guitars and like playing fast and yelling, and Elvis is intricate, and even on his like first album, it's not. I don't think of it as like aggressive music, or it is aggressive, but I don't think of it as what I mean, like. But because when I think of punk,
then I go back to you and say, many people doesn't realize it, but The Police was punk, and look at the lyrics and music.
Yeah, there you go.
And what you could do, with the bass line and all that. So it's like, was it punk? What we think of it? Or was it something a lot more intricate?
Right. I think that, because like I said, I think the Brits more commonly use punk, and I guess Europeans in general use punk as an ethos rather than a sound. In the way that, like, or maybe I'm just dumb, because
you're not, because for the Brits, I know they consider a working class thing. It was a certain kind of music for poor people from a certain part of London or the UK. So punk was also a class thing.
I'm also probably just a little bit younger than those folks, because I'm not young. I'm not saying I'm young. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not. I'm 41. So, but I'm saying I'm a little bit younger than some of the folks who probably have said that. And so again, like when I think of like my youth and I think of things that I thought of as punk, I'm thinking of a much, I don't even know what wave of punk rock that would be. Like, so the things I love.
Please don't say Green Day.
Well, I like Green Day. They're not my favorite punk band. My favorite punk band is probably, well, again, in my mind, punk band is probably NoFX. And I love NoFX, and I definitely super think of them as punk, and they have maintained that kind of feel for their entire career. And to put NoFX and Elvis Costello in the same bucket is difficult for me. Like, I'm like, okay. Again, the connections are going to be in the way that they operate more than the way that their sound comes out. So there you go.
No, I say, as we said, that's the same as saying Sex Pistols and the Police on the same phrase.
Right. Exactly. They're very different.
Exactly. Time travel.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's work here. Okay, I don't know if you heard my theory. Let's hear it. Comics are the only art form that can defy Einstein's theory of relativity. Let me explain this. Any other art form, this is movies. The arrow of time. It has to go there. There's a flashback, yeah, but it feels jarring. It does have to go this way. Novels have to go this way. Theater has to go this way, etc. Comics, you can say, stop. I'm going to tell 20 pages and it's all going to happen in the same second. Or I can say I'm going to jump back and forth as I wish. It's part of the language for me to just stop, go back and forth. In the other languages, you can use it, but it feels out of place. But in comics, it's just a part of the language to go in any direction that you want. Even now, with the shape of the panels, but I'm not talking about that now. I'm talking about the language itself lends to tell it in any other way and format you want.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. I have a couple of questions about whether or not that works. So the first one is, the simplest one is, why do you feel that would work in comics but not in a novel?
Because a novel, okay, let me say it this way. I don't have any novels here. I have a lot of comics. The novels are in another book.
Sure.
A novel, you have to keep going. You have to go,
Well, you have to keep going in a comic.
It's not natural, yeah, but in a comic. And then we go to the other part, which is we are the puppet masters. But in the comics is the art form again, which is my second part, where readers have more control. In comics, the reader can go this way, and at any time he can just do this, go back and read again. And
you could do that in a novel.
He determines, but no, but it's not natural. You don't have a reader normally going in a novel and go back 30 pages. But in comics, it's very natural for people to just go back and read again, to get a second, and it's back and forth. It's natural. It's part of the way we read.
Okay, all right. But even there, now here's where I will challenge your theory. Now, because again, I like it.
Hypothesis.
There's a lot of hypothesis. Sorry, because there are, and the other thing, of course, being that you turn a page and you can't help but see the future before you get there. You see what's on the right-hand page before you've read the left-hand page, which is a big thing in paginating the books. I never want to put a splash page on the right, because people will see it and it will spoil, and the entire left page becomes pointless. Why am I even going to read this? I already see that the superhero jumps in. So there's that. But now here's where I think that the freedom is not entirely true, because I think there is a constant drive as well. It's just more subtle and it's perhaps more manipulable. One of the most revelatory, I'm sure you've read it because everybody has read it because it's great. Understanding Comics by Scott Mccloud.
Of course, yeah.
One of the bits that blew my mind most when I read it, that made me go, oh my goodness, was the part where he reveals that a panel is not a still moment in time. Because you can have a panel where it's got a zillion balloons in it, and the time from one balloon to the other has passed, and literally cause and effect can happen in a panel. You can have someone saying something in a balloon that causes someone to knock over a a glass of water and water is dripping on the floor. But when you see the person talking, they're talking at the beginning of their balloon, and then the water is already spilled in the same panel. Like all time has passed in that still moment, which is not possible. But I would argue, while you can do that, I don't think you can do that in reverse, because there is a directional flow of time in that panel. I don't think you could do a panel where, at least not well, I think it would read as a mistake. If you have a panel where the dialogue is indicating the passage of time, but the left hand part of the panel is later in time than the right hand part of the panel. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I think, and again, because I'm sure Alan Moore is listening to this, I'm sure he will hear it and go, "Oh yeah," and he'll do it. But that would be an exceptional, amazing. I think it would be difficult to pull that off in a way that works without really jumping through some hurdles. Now, that said, it's still a really terrific.
Just so you know, Scott, I had him here for 3 hours, and Scott said, "You're right." Because he hadn't considered it, and he started thinking about it, and he said, "That's true. I can manipulate in any way I can." And he was starting to talk about mirrors, in the same panel. You can use a mirror to say something that's happened before.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Or you can use the stairs. There's a lot of, we got into a lot of, I can use the stairs and, make you think you have to read from the top to the bottom of the stairs. But in fact, what's happening is happening before in the bottom than on the top. So I'm telling you,
that's the thing. I will be honest with you. I love comic book formalism. I love when people write to the form, and I'm fascinated by it. I think it's so clever. I mean, again, that's part of the reason I am such a big fan of Alan Moore. He does that stuff so much and does it so well. That, again, so it's been a while since I read it, but I think it was Promethea that had the panel that was a Mobius strip, that it was like start anywhere and go around forever. That was amazing. I've worked with Al Ewing, who does great stuff like that. He did the book You Are Deadpool for me, which is a choose your own adventure game where you have to like roll dice and fight things and make decisions. And he conceived that. I mean, I'm not saying he made up the form, but he conceived the story and would just turn in a script. And the fact that he was able to work it all out, like, we very rarely, if ever, had to give him notes on, oh, this thread didn't connect right, or this part didn't lead into that. He did a map and he drew it all out, and he had this amazing, logically consistent thing. Boom, here it goes. And it was amazing. And I love when people play with the form. There was so I'm into it. So if somebody wants to write if somebody were to take advantage of this hypothesis you've put forth, and they could absolutely write a mind-blowing work of comic book. I hope somebody does, because I would. I keep telling there's something that's so amazing about comics, and something that also discussed with Scott when we were talking, which is something that makes comics again really different to any other format. Which is, in other formats, there's limits. Yes, there's gotta be told a certain way. But with comics, every time somebody says, "Oh, there's a limit there," there's going to be a new generation of creators, editors. They're going to say, "Wait, what? Limit? Fuck it," and just blow it away, destroy it, absolutely,
and find the next limit. So comics have no limits in their format, in their forms, and the way they tell stories. And let's talk about the multiverse. Let's talk about gravity. Sure. Why don't we talk in comics about gravity? Why do we have, the strong forces, but gravity is so weak? Maybe we're talking about, where this is our boundary with another universe. And in the other universe, everybody's like this flat because gravity is so strong. Why don't we tell stories about the difference between our side of things and the other side of things? Because comics allow you to do it.
You could do so much.
Through two dimensions and 3 dimensions of the same comic.
Absolutely. That would be mind-blowing too. That would be super fun. And you're right. I mean, Scott. I mean, you and Scott are both right about that. In that, comics are always innovating. Like, what is comics? What is the actual definition? And again, Scott probably did the best definition of it that anybody's done. But to think that the thing that Marvel sells is just what comics are is not the full thing. I've been looking at webtoons and the vertical scrolling comics. They're such a different style of storytelling, but they're so rich. Then they can do things that we can't do in our format when used. I mean, you can take you could probably take a Marvel comic and restructure it. It would take some doing, given the way that people draw wide panels so often. So that would be difficult, but it would take some doing. But you could restructure just generally a Marvel comic and tell it as a webtoon, as a vertical comic. But to really use the form properly, you need to write it and create it for that form, because it has different strengths and weaknesses than we have in our rectangular page that we use. It's exciting. It's exciting that people can innovate. I mean, and Scott's always been at the center of that. He did scrolling comics a zillion years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
and he kept telling me that, his second book, he got internet comics so wrong. He was thinking about, I was so wrong, I have to rewrite the whole book again.
I hope he does, because I'll read it.
I was like, well, do it. And he was like, no, I don't want to. Just be rewriting. I'm writing a new one. It's like, okay, but it's going to touch on that. Like, yeah, okay. So that's it better, But and another thing before just so you know, we've been at this for 1 hour and 50 minutes, so you probably need to go. So,
yeah, we'll probably need to wrap up. So, but go ahead.
Important fact for me is, that reading comics gives us superpowers.
Oh,
let me explain with one.
Please.
When you started as a very young age, as I did. In my case, and we were both reading things we shouldn't, because probably Craven's Last Hunt, and in my case, Savage Sword of Conan from my older
there you
brother,
go.
when I was 4 or 5. It made us who we are. Let's say it that way. That the first thing you learn is pattern recognition. Which, I mean, pattern recognition, caveman, that bush is rustling, so maybe there's like fucking animal there is going to kill you, so run away. So yeah. But for us, you see a panel, Clark Kent is doing this. We don't need to see open, run, start flying. We know the next panel is going to be Superman flying. We just know it. We don't need anything else. We don't need information. So imagine that you're a reader, and the superpower it gives us, and that's why I keep insisting everywhere in the world about comics being taught from primary school, is when we watch a movie, when we read a novel, when we watch a theater play, when we read a newspaper, a magazine, whatever, as readers, comics readers, we never take anything for granted. We always check what's behind, we read between the lines, because that's what we were taught, again, with Scott Mccloud. Comics are what happens between the gutters, between the panels. That's what we know. So every time I talk to teachers or schools, I'm like, you need to teach comics, because when you know how to read comics, when you learn at a very young age, in life, you never consider things the way you see them. You always think what's behind. So what do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely true. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's a different kind of literacy. I mean, there's no denying that reading comics is different from reading a book. Yeah. I mean, all you have to do to see how clear that is talk to someone who's an older person who has done a lot of novel reading in their life, and just give them a comic that doesn't ever read comics. They will be lost. Yeah. I mean, my mother is an incredibly smart person, super literate, but she had to learn how to read comics, because it's not as easy as it seems to those of us who have been doing it our whole lives. And so you're right. It's a different form. It's a different way to think of things. And because of that, what is it called? It's not completion, is it? No, it's it's the thing, again, that Scott talks about, where you see part of a letter and the rest of the letter. Yes. And I can't remember what it's called now. But that's what comics is all about. You see a panel here and you see a panel here, and your brain has to go, let me fill in what happens in between, and you do so much of the work. And you could say, well, you do a lot of work as a novel reader. You're imagining all the visuals. Yes, but it's a different kind of work. You're interpreting text into an image, which is kind of like interpreting thoughts into images. So that is a useful thing, but this is different. This is because of the extra step of like double conversion. You're going, I'm going to convert a visual image into an idea at the same time as I'm taking in textual information, synthesize those, create, as we said, create the thing that happens between those two panels, and it will create a seamless run of events in my mind. And again, I've been reading comics for so long. I read comics very quickly now, probably more quickly than I should, but I have a lot to get through. And it's, if I were to really think about and analyze what's happening in my head when I'm reading a comic, it's kind of amazing the amount of work that's going on. Yeah. And it's just happening in the background without me at all thinking about it. My eyes are scanning over the words, reading what the words are, and taking in the image like practically subconsciously. I am not actually sitting there thinking, okay, Spider-Man punches that guy there and he jumps. Like none of those words are happening in my head. My head is just going, and a movie is playing where I have filled in 99% of the frames. And it's kind of like when you think about catching a ball, that thing where people talk about when you catch a ball, like the amount of amazing physics that you are calculating in your brain that you couldn't do on paper, probably, unless you study that. But like you can't do it on paper, but somebody throws a ball at you and you just go, boom, got it. And it's because of how amazing our brains are. This is exercising a part of our brains that you just don't do otherwise. That's something I know I've seen Alan Moore talk about as well, about how I think it's, and again, I'm not a brain scientist, so I'm taking his word for this, but it was talking about how the visual center and the textural center of the brain are on different sides of your brain.
Different sides of the brain, and comics is the only art form where you use both. Yeah, absolutely.
That, and I guess watching foreign films because they have the subtitles. But yeah, no, absolutely. That's the only one that does that. And it does it in a way. And again, I think that I have never thought about it this way, but I think that probably exercises the logic centers of your brain, because you need to be able to fill in those cause and effect. This happened and then this happened. Therefore, I have filled in and I have deduced the logical outcome of that. And that probably is a big thing. And it also explains I'm going to say it a little bit dismissively, but I know that I love in my heart. It also explains why so many of our fans are continuity nerds, because because it's the same skill. Because it's the same skill to read this comic book and read this comic book and go, the same characters in both of those comic books. And now I, in my comic book pattern recognition brain, am going to form a continuity. That's another thing people always who really harp on continuity are like, well, you have to do it. And I go, no, continuity isn't a thing that we put in comic books. It's a thing that happens between comic books. It's Iron Man showing up in Iron Man, and then Stan Lee writing Avengers, and people going, those two books happened, and therefore I have made a connection. And yes, of course, he put in references, but you know what I'm saying. The real meat of the work, just like on a comics page, happens in the reader's mind, where they have assembled all of the Iron Man appearances into a life story. Because I'll tell you a secret, it doesn't actually make sense. They're not real. None of it will actually work. People, I love to / hate to argue about timelines with fans, because timelines get real uptight about fans, where they go, no, Cyclops is 45 years old, and I can prove that because here is every time that anyone has ever mentioned a length of time, and if you add them all together, it clearly shows that exactly 37 years have passed since this comic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not a math equation. He's not real. He also said Ronald Reagan was president, so that should fix it in time too, except it doesn't, because he's not that old. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, that's the same skill though, because it's the same. And I can't remember the freaking name of it. It's not completion, but it's something like completion. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the or you see a piece of a thing and you form the rest of it in your mind. Anyway, that's great. I love it. I love it. I love thinking about comics. Comics are so good.
Okay, so last
Last one.
Where do you think comics should go now? What's the next step?
Well, it's a great question.
You can take it both ways. For you, as a creative person, as an editor, where do you think what's your next step? Where do you think you should go? Or comics in general? You pick,
I was thinking of it as comics in general for sure, but I'll do what I can.
You're the boss. You pick the word what you want to.
It's I don't 100% know, because obviously physical comics is what I fell in love with, and it's still what I want to say it's what I read. I actually read both now.
Mm-hmm.
I still get my Marvel comps, but if I'm honest, I also get digital Marvel comps, and I read most of my Marvel comics digitally. But I know that's weird. I never thought that would happen.
Who are you? What's Jordan? Who are you?
I mean, again, I still have a giant stack of comics. When they send me the comics, I keep them. I love. If they stopped giving us physical comics from Marvel, physical comps, just to give us digital comps, there are definitely Marvel comics I would go, well, great, now I have to buy them. Like, I'm not going to stop physically owning Amazing Spider-Man anytime soon. Like, I love that series. And I've bought it even when I didn't love it. And I'm one of those people, even though I said they shouldn't, I do, because I love Spider-Man that much. But, so I would. But anyway, so I read both. But all the non-Marvel comics I buy physically. I go to Midtown, Grand Central. Even during the pandemic, we drive down every month or so that I can pop in really quick wearing a mask and buy all my comics there. And I love physical comics. That said, it's hard to deny that as far as accessibility goes, digital is going to just grow. Mm-hmm. And the more that it does, the more that all that Scott Mccloud stuff starts entering into it. The more that things like, again, it's hard to deny that webtoons are incredibly popular. Yeah. My wife, when she stopped going on Twitter, which was over the last year, she'd already read some webtoons, but when she stopped going on Twitter, because it's awful and toxic, I stopped going on as well. When she stopped going on, she replaced all of that Twitter time with webtoons time. So she'll just sit down and be like, I got 5 minutes, boom, and she'll read a comic or 5, depending. I mean, some of them are fast, It's a very casual way for her to interact with it, and she got super into it. And there are millions of readers who read comics that way. So I think there's a huge future in that form. Mm-hmm. Whether that form spreads to superhero comics, which is what I tend to work on, we'll have to see. Because again, Marvel has tried various other forms over the years, and some of them have worked and some of them not. I worked really hard on Infinite Comics when we were doing those. I worked really hard on them, and I'm super proud of them. But nobody read them. Nope. And it bums me out because they were really cool. But nobody read them. So we'll have to see what happens.
We did some of those, as you know. And yes, nobody read them.
We did that Deadpool Dracula's Gauntlet series that it was Jerry Duggan and Riley Brown, and we introduced the woman that Deadpool married, and it's so much fun. And we eventually retrofit it into a comic, and lots of people bought the comic and have read the comic, but not nearly as many bought the digital version. And I think the digital version is way better because it's just, again, we wrote and drew that for that medium, and we did things that they work on the page. We made sure it would. When we turned it into a comic, we figured out how to make it work. Like, we worked hard on it. We're not slackers. But we worked hard in the first place on making it work digitally in ways that sometimes don't work otherwise. Like, I think this is available on the internet somewhere. I could be wrong, but the first issue has a James Bond opening sequence, like with, sexy woman silhouettes and Deadpool and, chimichangas and all this stuff. And Jerry was like, he put in the script, like, let's do a James Bond sequence. And he had me write a song for it. And I'm not credited because I wrote it, but I'm not the writer of the comic, so I don't get credit. But I wrote lyrics and I wrote music and I played it. So I think somewhere on the internet, someone took the audio of the song I wrote and put it over the like click through infinite comic opening, and it looks really fun. So if I don't know how easy that is to find, but if it's out there, somebody should check it out. And that's the whole thing, man. It's got this great stuff where one panel fades into the next, and it's not animation, but it does that juxtaposition of panels in a different way that plays with your brain in a different way, and I think turned out really cool. Anyway, I'm advertising a thing that failed. Feel free to go through the archives and look at that. We're not making any more of them, so if you like them, do your best to find the ones that worked.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, my point is, yes, the medium is awesome, and I want it to explore, and I want it to grow, and digitally offers a lot of opportunities, even though I'm sure we will continue printing comics for a very, very long time. And it is Marvel's main medium. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I do think that comics as a whole will continue to grow and evolve through that way.
And by the end of the day, what you love, and we took it from generally to personally now. The most important thing is to keep exploring the medium, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely.
What you can do in comics, how you make them grow.
Absolutely. I always want to try new things. Working with Jonathan has been terrific. Like I said, the way that our office operates right now is completely different than any experience I've had at Marvel before. And it's an experiment in storytelling. And I expect that it will continue for quite some time, but we'll see what happens. But at the same time, continue means evolve. Like, it will continue to grow and change shape. And I always want that to happen. I always want to find new and exciting ways to do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys, this man needs to go back to work. I think we could keep talking for like 10 days. Like this.
It would be easy, but yeah.
we need to stop. So, first of all, Jordan, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
And to all of you, thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here, and be back here in a couple of days en español con Raquel Gu y Maribel Carod. In Spanish with Raquel Gu and Maribel Carod on Friday. And again, thank you all. Wear your mask. Be decent. We're still vaccinating people. Don't think we're over. We have to be careful and be decent, be people, please. So, goodbye. Thank you all. See you on Friday. And we're off in 3